All right, so today's topic is database migration. So in development, database migration, changing the schema, it's not such a big deal. You don't really have real data. So even if you create drop tables, add new columns, remove columns, or whatever, um, the since all you have is test data, it's not a problem. But of course, in production, um, you run a very high risk of losing important company or customer data, right? So sometimes uh, losing that data, sometimes that data is irrecoverable. Uh, and almost all the time when you're deploying a new version, um, it almost always leads to extended downtime, and for extended downtime, that can also lead to revenue loss. So the way you avoid these problems is by automating the schema migration. Okay, so if since very since high risk ang mga database migrations, you should automate it so that you minimize the chance of making a mistake in database migration. So one of the most popular tools in for data migration is a tool called Liquibase. It's an open source tool, although there's also a commercial version with more features. Basically, what Liquibase does is all the features, all the changes, all the each change to the database is stored in what's called a change log file. All right, so every change, you add a column or you create a new table, uh, that's logged in a single file that becomes part of your version control. Okay, so Liquibase uses multiple formats. I like to use the SQL format, uh, but some other formats are in XML, YAML, JSON, or Groovy. Okay, so you have your change log, and in your database, you have a database table called database change log. All right. So sa change log, those are the steps you've taken to evolve your database, and then the table in the database records which of those steps have been applied to that database. All right. So when you're deploying an update to your application, uh, you're going to change the schema. What Liquibase does, it looks at the change log, it looks at the database table, the database change log table, and it sees which of the changes have not yet been applied, and then it applies those changes. Okay. So let's start using Liquibase. So first um, we're going to modify our setting for Hibernate, because right now, see, Hibernate, when you modify the domain model, uh, it's go when you launch Spring, it's going to automatically modify the schema. Okay, so that's fine. That's very convenient during production, right? So you just modify your Java code and then the schema changes along with it. But that's very risky in production, right? It's fine for development, but it's very risky for production. So at this point, we're going to decide to turn off the auto generation of Hibernate from the database schema. So we're going to just set it to validate the schema, but not to generate the schema for the production side of our code. But for our test, uh, we're going to still continue to use the create setting, so that every time we make a modification, um, the test, we don't have to hassle with the schema. All right, and of course, since we're using test containers, every every run of each integration test, we have an empty database, so we need a way to generate the schema conveniently. So we'll leave, uh, we'll set it we'll set Hibernate to continue to create um, the schema in the tests, but not for the prod side. Okay, so that's the preparation. Then we modify our build file so that we configure Liquibase into our build, into our Gradle file, and then we create a directory which will hold our change log. Okay, and then we generate the initial change log using the generate change log command, and then we sync. We create the database table, the database change log table, by calling the change log sync command, and then that's when, after that, we're ready to start modifying our domain model. Okay, so in this case, we'll add a new class, and then in order to update our change log, we run the command diff change log. So the expected changes to our database based on our changes in our domain model will be reflected in the change log. Okay, then finally, of course, we finally want to update the database, so we use the update command. All right, so let's see. Let's actually see how this works. All right, so step 0, again, we're going to have to set Hibernate to validate instead of create. So here in application.properties, right? So right now it's set to create. That way, every time we modify the domain model, it will update the database schema. That's, again, that's very convenient during development, but we don't want that happening in production, because it might end up losing very important production data, right? So let's put this to a safer setting, validate. All right, so now Hibernate will only check if the correct schema is in the database. It's not gonna modify the schema. All right, but of course, for our integration tests, we want to be able to we still want to be able to what's this to create schemas on the fly, right? So let's add that. Let's make sure that Hibernate, that property for our tests, it's still set to create. All right. Let's register a property here. All right. So this will override the property in our application.properties file, so that it will be create instead of validate. All right. So kasi kung wala, right, if you run the integration tests, they're going to fail because they're no longer generating the schema. See, so here the schema is no longer being generated, so all the integration tests are failing. So it says can't find the tables, right? Because the schema wasn't generated. So we need to add this property back just for our tests. Okay, so now everything's working. All right, so okay, so we've configured the code to be prod ready. So now we have to modify our build file to integrate Liquibase. All right, so let's do that. So let's go to the build file. Let's start with adding the Liquibase plugin. All right, so here I'm adding a plugin for Liquibase, the Gradle plugin. All right, so we'll also need there's also several dependencies that this plugin is going to require. Let me copy over those dependencies. Okay, so let me add those dependencies over here. All right. And then we need to set so here, ito na, ito na yung mga Liquibase commands. Right. The various Liquibase commands. We also need to configure Liquibase. We need to tell Liquibase where the database is, etc. Right. So what's the username and password, right? Of course, those are already defined in application.property. So we just want, so I'll add some code so that it will read whatever is already set in application.properties. It will just read it from application.properties para hindi siya doble. All right. So first I'll read the application.properties file, right? Hindi siya nagko-compile, so I need to import. Kailangan ko mag-import ng java.io and java.util. Alright. So there. Import statements. Right. All right. And then now that we've sucked in the information from application.properties, the properties there, let's configure Liquibase. Okay, so here's the configurations for Liquibase. All right, so we're going to say this is going to be the location of the changelog file, and then the rest, the stuff we define in application.properties, the URL of the database, username and password, our driver, and then here is our yung this one reference URL later on pag this basically is saying um, it's going to look at kasi when you do a diff later on when we're going to do a diff, we want to see the difference between see diff kasi it will generate a change log based on the difference between two databases, right? But what we're comparing in this case isn't two databases, rather the database and the domain model. Okay, so based on the schema that Hibernate is going to generate, what are the missing commands that we need to alter the schema to get it to the schema that Hibernate is going to generate. So the reference URL is not this is supposed to be uh, another database, but in this case we're pointing it to the domain model. Okay, so our domain model is at com.orangeandbrowns.enlistment.domain, and we want it to generate Postgres uh, SQL dialect, and then some other notes here on we want it lowercase, etc. All right. So that's for the uh, wait. So so this is the domain model Hibernate. This is the dialect. Uh, right. So these are just to yeah. I'll put this in some notes somewhere so that it's easy for you to copy paste. Next is actually let me copy paste this na so that you guys won't have a hard time kasi syempre mahaba to. Let me go back to the slides. Let me add an extra slide here. There. All right. So that should make it easy for you guys to copy over the properties. Okay, so next, right, we need to create the directory where the changelog is going to be, right? So here we said it's going to be in the resources directory /db/changelog, right? So we need to create that directory. Asan siya? Main resources, right? So we need to add a new directory. So we have to have a DB directory, and inside the DB directory we need to have a change log directory. Change log. Alright. So we don't create the file db.changelog-master.sql because that's going to be generated. Alright. So we created the directory. Then, okay, so now we should be ready to generate the initial change log. So generate change log. Alright. So alright, so it's going to tell Hibernate not yet, hindi pa pala. This is just going to look at the current database. Okay, so si generate change log, we'll look at the current database. So yung current database is alright, so this is the current database. And then generate change log. After the generate change log, there's now this file. Okay, so all the steps needed to recreate that database is now here. So if you're going now, when you're going to deploy this to a server, we'll use the update command to run these scripts. All right. So 20 steps in order to recreate the database. Next step is we will sync. Okay, change log sync. So of course these are already, this is the existing schema. So now we want to we want the database to know that these changes are already applied, right? Otherwise Liquibase will think they're not yet applied, and then we'll try to do it all over again. So the command is change log sync. Change log sync. Let's do that. All right. So now there should now be two new tables. Okay. The important one is this one, database change log. So if we open it up, we'll see that it has a table that records all the changes in the change log which have been applied. Okay, so so here, right? So all of this has been up. This was the first to be applied. This well, these are the change sets, or the steps, the individual steps to create the database. And what this is saying is these have already been these steps have already been applied. Okay. That way, if you run update again, if you run an update, it will check which change sets have not yet been applied. All right. What's the next step? The next step is we make changes to our domain model. All right. So let's make changes to our domain model. So our new assignment, our new requirement, if we go here, is to create is to add an instructor to the section class, and then each instructor is a member of faculty. So let's say we should have a faculty class, and then there's a faculty number, which is the ID, and the faculty number should be non-negative. Okay, so now let's now modify the domain model. All right, so let's create a new class. Right, let's call it, so we're supposed to call it faculty. All right. And then for oops, and then we're going to give it a faculty number. Right, and then constructor. Right, and then this is faculty numbers, the identifier. Right, and then all right, so one more to string. All right. Now we need to make this JPA entity, right? So what do we need to make it a JPA entity? So here, let's make it an entity. That way, a table will be generated for this class, and we're gonna say this is the primary key. Right. And another thing is we need to have a no-arg constructor, okay, because JPA uses the no-arg constructor. Since we're using Hibernate, we'll make it private. Okay, so JPA always needs a no-arg constructor. And then let's just make it -1. Okay. Leave a message here to warn programmers never to call this. Well, that's why we made it private. Okay. Oh, I forgot that it has to be non-negative, right? So is true. Faculty number has to be greater than or equal to 0. What message should I have here? All right. Okay, we have our JPA entity, and then um, we need to provide a repository. Create a repository for this um, class. Okay, I guess we'll call it faculty repository. Alright, so this is a repository, and it will extend JPA repository. The primary key is an integer. All right. All right, and then we said that section will now have an instructor. All right, so let's add a field, private final faculty instructor. All right. Let's make this menu to 1. And then we need to add instructor. We need to make it part of the constructor. And then maybe we make sure that the instructor is not null. And then we need to assign all right. Variable instructor. Oh yeah, for here we need to also add this to the no-arg constructor. Again, we're just this is just for JPA to do its magic. We should never call this. All right, are we done? Of course, I'm sure we have some tests that are broken now. Right. So we need to fix the tests. Okay. So now we need let me create in as a new test utils here. So test utils, I will add default faculty number I don't know, I'll call it 1000, and then maybe default faculty, maybe a factory method for creating faculty for testing purposes. Alright, so let's update our tests. Wait, kailangan pa pala to. Faculty. So let's update our tests. Saan pa yung mga broken tests? Here. See, and then what else? Alright, and other tests, we need to update this test as well. else broken? Okay, so finally, let's see if we can actually uh, get Liquibase to um, generate the difference between uh, create the new table, right? So all right, so we need to um, update using the diff changelog command. All right, so let us go to our Gradle file again and run the diff changelog. So if we go to our changelog again, all right, so notice we have some version. Bakit may version? Hindi na-generate yung faculty. Wait, that's not right. Action controller. I need to update section controller, right? So let me update the test first. Section controller test. Right. So we're going to need where section controller is going to need faculty repository. Now we need to add this. We need to add another param for faculty here. add a setter for the repository. Okay, let's see if this unit test still works. Okay. Now let's see if the diff finally works. I hope it really... Alright, finally. So it's added uh, the changes to the database. Alright. Okay, so here, ito yung mga database changes. But these database changes haven't been applied. Alright, so yung database, if you look at the database, wala pa yung faculty table, and then wala pa yung, di pa nadadagdag instructor column sa section. Alright, so now we have to we need to update the database from the changelog using update. Alright, so let's run an update. Hopefully it works. Aha, there's an error. Saan to? Sa 20. Change set. So it detected that there was a change, and then iba na yung hash. niya na nag-iba yung checksum. So, let me add something to bypass yung checksum check dito. And then let me try again. Ayaw. Already exists. See, let me get rid of this change set because it already exists. Let's error ulit. Unexpected error. Relation section already exists. Teka. Okay. Column version of related section. Okay. Sometimes the change sets need to be edited. Version. Sige, let me get rid of this one. It's weird. Why was this generated anyway? Anyway, let's see. Hi, sa wakas. Okay. So now, let's check if this. Okay, so meron ng faculty table, right? And then si section, yung columns niya nadagdagan ng asan yung instructor? Here, ayan. Nadagdagan ng instructor. Okay, so na-update na yung ating database table. Alright. So, let's finish the requirement, right? So, if we run all our tests, let's check the integration test if they've worked. Alright, so pero nag-fail tong si create section, right? Because so now may kulang tayong it was expecting an additional parameter, right? So let's modify the test, right? So now we want it to have we want to insert a section, right, into the database. So JDBC template dot update, we want to insert into faculty, and then let's say so faculty number with values, let's just say the faculty number is 100. No, let's just use the defaults we defined in the test utils. All faculty default faculty number. Since test details, we defined a default faculty number, right? So let's go back to alright, so we inserted default faculty number, and then we'll insert a parameter for faculty number. We'll call the param faculty number. And then dapat pala string. Okay. So if we run the integration test, working, right? Maybe we can add another assertion here. Assert equals results.get. What's the table name again? What's the table name here? Instructor underscore faculty number. Instructor underscore faculty underscore number. Let's run this again. It's not working. Okay, so let's we need to modify the let's see what happens when we do a manual test. Okay, let's do a manual test here. Let's actually run. What are we gonna see when we run this? Okay. Okay, it fails. Why does it fail? Because um, hmm, there's some well, it's not really clear. Anyway, let's see. We need to have part of the. I'm pretty sure it's failing because we don't have in our page. If we open the page, um, our sections.html page. Let's open it up in let's open this up in Chrome, right? So we don't have um, a place for faculty, right? Um, so we should add a page for faculty. I mean a section in the page for faculty. So we can probably copy what we have for rooms. All right, so copy na lang natin what we have for rooms. We just need to make a bit of room for everything. So siguro let's make this narrower. And, 1, 2, 3. So gawin natin mas narrow si rooms. And then copyahin natin. And then instead of rooms, magiging faculty, right? Or instructors. Right. So hindi siya kasya, pangit na yung layout niya. So bawasan din natin to siguro. 3. Does that all fit? Oh, yan, kasya na lahat. Pero now this is too masyadong malaki yung text dito. Gawin natin maybe H4. Ay, hindi, not the schedule. Si days, gawin natin H5. Ayan. Okay, this is better. Okay, so now si instructors, let's have it as an no one as an instructors. Ito. Let's modify this to have proper IDs now. So this is gonna be the instructors section. So itong div, we'll call it instructors. And then of course, instead of room name, it's just faculty number. Faculty number like that. We only need one. Tanggalin natin yung column na yan. Tanggalin natin yung column na to. Tapos so we are going to each, instead of we're going to have a collection called instructors, and then for each instructor we will have a faculty number. That's our HTTP, that's our form parameter. and the value we will get it from um, ano, yung sa class, right? Instructor dot faculty number. So which means we need to expose a getter. So balik tayo sa faculty. Let's expose a getter here. Public, so because it needs to be seen in the page, needs to be visible from the page. Get faculty number. All right. And then, of course, this is still okay. Okay, so my faculty number. Okay, so this looks right. Then let's populate the table. Wait a minute, let's see. Dito sa sections controller, pag sa get, we need to populate the model with all the instructors. Alright. Para mag-populate yung yung section with instructors. And then sa table, let's log into the table para we can para at least syempre, dapat lagyan natin laman yung faculty table, right? There's our tables. Of course, we want to insert into faculty. Faculty number, and then yung values, let's just make it 100, 200, and 300 para lang may laman yung table natin, so that when we do our manual testing, it's not working. Ayaw. Let's see, walang laman. Kailangan natin ng laman. Ba't ayaw niya? Let's try a different terminal. Alright. How come it wasn't working? Let me try this. Enter. Oh, it worked on the regular terminal. I don't know why it didn't work. Ayan, may mga laman na siya. Okay. So, weird. It didn't work on the this particular terminal, but it worked on a normal terminal. So, let's see. Let's do the manual test again. Okay, it looks like sana it launches normally na. Okay, I think it's launched normally. Let's okay. Huh. There's still an error. Parse exception, admin ID. Something about the admin. What did I do? May binago yata ako. Admin. Okay. It needs to be public. This one needs to be public. Para makita siya sa time leaf. Alright. Let's start it again. Okay. Okay na. And then we have our web page, nagload yung faculty, nagload yung subjects. Let's test. I'll create a new section. Ito yung okay, so nag-create ng new section. Okay. For the next assignment, MCO5, for iteration 5, you'll just do everything I did. Just message me if you have any questions. Alright. Implement everything I did, and then may dagdag na requirements. Faculty should have last name, first name. Okay, so so dito, instead of faculty number, palitan nyo ng first name, last name. Or maybe you can have 3 columns. Hopefully magkasya pa rin. So faculty number, first name, last name. Right? And then sa class nyo, sa faculty class, where is it? In the faculty class, you need to add first name, last name fields. Okay, so dapat, and then palabasin nyo dito sa web page. Okay. And of course, you have to use Liquibase to syempre, dadagdag nyo yung first name, last name column sa faculty table. So you have to use Liquibase in order to update the schema. Alright. And also implement the condition that no two sections cannot share the same instructor if their schedules overlap. Okay, so I expect that you uh, also create the appropriate uh, unit tests, unit test or unit tests for this. Okay, so this is the last assignment. It's 30 points. All right. Okay. Just message me if you have any questions. Thanks.